Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another power packed and informative YouTube live session presented by Scoreleap. For those of you who don't know, Scoreleap is an edtech company that provides access to higher education to universities across the globe. Our platform's comprehensive end to end service includes counseling throughout the application process, as well as test preparation services for GMAT, GRE, and SATs. The mentors at Scoreleap help the students build scholarship winning essays and guide them throughout the entire process. I am Manu Shah, your host for the day. So, without any further ado, let's dive right into the session inside the INSEAD MBA Secrets Revealed by the INSEAD MBA Student. INSEAD is a prestigious business school with campuses in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and it offers a highly regarded Master of Business Administration program renowned for its global focus, rigorous curriculum, and diverse student body. Today we have Mr. Vibhav Parikh with us, who is currently pursuing his MBA from INSEAD. We hope that from this session, he will help us understand what it takes to earn admit from this top B school and what kind of opportunities INSEAD has to offer. Mr. Vibhav Parikh, who is pursuing his MBA from INSEAD, is an investment professional with investing experience in early and growth stage companies in consumer goods, lending, specialty chemicals, and healthcare sectors. He has provided strategic advice to international investment partners in Czech Republic, Spain, and China. He has also co-authored two policy papers for Indian members of parliament on public issues that concern him the most, empowering SME businesses and startups and safeguarding our oceans. Mr. Vibhav Parikh has been associated with the NAFA Capital Group for more than 6 years, contributing to its growth through various capacities and positions. Having done his Bachelor of Management Studies, Business Administration and Management from the University of Mumbai, Vibhav has also been a visiting faculty at the Jai Hind University for the students of Bachelor of Management Studies, thus having a career trajectory spanning across academia and industry sectors. Currently, Vibhav is serving as the Vice President of the INSEAD Private Equity Club, working alongside students, founders, and investors. So welcome, Vibhav, to this Scoreleap session. And how are you doing?
Thank you, Manush. I'm doing really well. It's quite, not to make it very cliched, but it's quite hot in Europe right now. So I'm fairly surviving, but I'm doing really well. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you so much for hosting this session.
Well, thank you for joining with us today. Before we get started, I would like to announce that we will be opening the floor for question and answers during the last 15 minutes of the session. Audience, please feel free to drop in your queries in the chat section. We'll address them all based on the availability of the time. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for exciting updates on more such events. So are we good to go, Vibhav? Shall we begin now?
Of course, yes. Fire away.
Yes. So, my first question being, can you walk us through your pre-MBA profile and the journey that you had to go through once you decided you wanted to pursue your MBA, which also includes the GMAT prep and the shortlisting of colleges and etc. So, could you throw some light on
that? I'll make it brief because you've also mentioned about my background, which is in part related to this question. So I was born and brought up in Bombay and in India, and like you mentioned, was working in India right after my undergrad degree. Was focused more in the investment finance side of things, and I continued to work, and I did not really see a need for an MBA until I started working with international partners and working with foreign colleagues, which made me kind of think about an MBA, but maybe early 2020, and by end of 2020, mid 2020, I decided to give the GMAT. I decided to look at schools, and that led me to shortlisting a few schools in the EU UK region, one of which was INSEAD, of course. It's the birthplace of diversity, at least for business schools, because just to give you some background to your viewers, that INSEAD was formed by an ex-Harvard professor back in 1958, and it was formed to build a bridge between France and Germany right after the war. So there's a lot of background to why the school was started, and the diversity lives not just by name cards, but it's very well rooted in the ethos of the program as well, and the school as well. So it was top in my list, and of course, but as every Indian would, any aspiring Indian would have, he would have to have options, because we are all here to get the best out of what we have and what we can. So I had a couple of other options, but I knew that, at least for me, I wanted to do an MBA with a bunch of students from different parts of the world, because that's what I liked in my job in the last few years, where I was working with a lot of international colleagues. And also it had to be really, really good. That was my other criteria. So yeah, I wouldn't have joined any other business school if I didn't really. One of our professors said that if you have a plan B, I don't really buy it completely, but if you have a plan B, then you're only going to aim for plan B. So he always said that never have a plan B, just stick to plan A and just have one plan. But anyway, so cutting the story short, I chose to then give the GMAT, of course. I don't know if there'll be questions on GMAT, I'm sure, so I'm not getting into that. And then I mean, I was not technically building my resume or anything for the program or for a business school application, but somehow I did things that interested me. Maybe we can talk about that in the following questions, and that's what differentiated my application from the other few hundred applications that come in.
Well, thank you for that explanation. I'm sure it will be helpful to a lot of aspirants out there. Moving on, let us talk about your typical day at INSEAD. How does that look like? You could walk us through.
So I don't know how many of you guys in the call have gone through or are in what process of the MBA application, but INSEAD is one of the only schools that is very, very rigorous because of its timeline. It is only 10 months long, which is extremely short for a business program that's supposed to actually technically be for 2 years, at least in the US and Canada. So why I'm stating this is because the typical day changes by period, by month, right? So in the first 4 months, the typical day was about 6 hours of classes. So you'd start. So this is basically the first 2 periods where you have all your core classes, where you have to literally be in class from about 8:30 to 5, maybe sometimes 8:30 to 7:15 or 8:30 to 5, depending on the day. So it was extremely rigorous and intense, but then of course it's a big business school and we are here to make friends and network and build relationships. So all the time after that goes in socializing and networking in different kinds of events, which would include consumption of drinks that do not let you wake up at 8:30, but then you still have to wake up at 8:30 and then go to class. So it's extremely intense, and so that's why the typical day is very tiring, and it's so tiring that you don't realize how tired you are until you actually get a break, which is maybe in between the breaks between the 2 periods, or after the 2 periods get over, which is in P3, which is the 3rd period, when you have a much more relaxed schedule where it's just 2 main courses and everything else are electives. And then that then changes the entire paradigm of what you do in a day and how you schedule your day depending on your classes and courses. So it's like I mentioned, I don't know how much more in depth you want to go and how much time you have, but the typical day is, it's atypical. So it changes every period. Let's put it that way. So you have a typical day only for the schedule for that month, and then everything for that period, and then it changes every period. So because like you mentioned, we have 2 campuses, at least for the MBA program. So a typical day would be for me now is in Fontainebleau in France, but then in P5 when I go to Singapore, it's going to be a completely different typical day in P5 in November and December this year. So that's the beauty of the program, where it's not you have to keep being you got to get used to different kinds of schedules all the time, and it really strengthens how much variability and how much you don't know comes your way, and then you have to just figure it out. So it's a lot of figuring out as well. In your typical day, you have to figure out a lot of things. How do you manage time? How do you balance building friends, relationships? And then how do you balance that with, this is the typical triangle, right? Work, social, and studying, academics. So that's what you do. And it's quite a lot of fun, to be honest. So yeah.
Well, that definitely sounds and seems tiring, but thank you for that visual representation of that what a typical day looks like. Now I would like you to get into the nitty-gritties of this structure, and if you could throw some light on how the course is structured at INSEAD, and what electives are offered, and which one have you chosen?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, it's the first two periods are the INSEAD program is split into 5 periods. P1 and P2, they call P1 until P5. P1, P2 is the score period where you don't really choose anything. You're just given basically it's for students to be on par in terms of the knowledge and the technical skill set you need. So I'm in currently the P3 period because I did the January to December class. So I just finished the P3, which is the first period of electives that we had. And that's where you actually get to see all the different possibilities of learnings, and it's super exciting. I can throw some light on some of the, so I'm, like you mentioned, I'm a finance professional, and I have a lot of this background in finance, and I've got a CFA charter as well. So my goal was never to get more in depth or get more knowledge in finance, but to actually move the needle around and look at other things which could be marketing, or OB, which is organizational behavior, and leadership classes. So that's some of the electives I've taken this in period 3. In P3 were revolved around these themes. So I did one which is called authentic decision making, where we had basically a professor who was a PhD in mathematics, who now has shifted gears, and she's teaching this class, which is a class which you learn in the forest. So Fontainebleau has a forest right next door. So we were in the forest for most of the day, most of the time portion for that elective, and we were taught all these exercises to think and be grounded, and make decisions in a very different manner, and just let go of things. So to give you some to make you visualize it, we were basically in our campus, on the grounds in our campus, yelling and making sounds and playing catch related to some exercise. I'm not getting into that, but that there was a reason why we did all of that. And so that was very fascinating to do, because I wouldn't have realized or imagined doing that in an MBA program. So there are lots of electives and then there's the technical stuff, which is like pricing analytics and people analytics, where you can get to learn from professors about how you can gauge people, and how do you measure that across time, across organizations, and what are the skills, technical skill sets you need for that. So I did that as well. So I took a couple of electives on the analytics part, where one was on pricing and one was on people. And the beauty of this is you do these electives to just get an introduction to an entire new subject, and then you can, and that's my goal as well in this summer break, to go back and read more about what I learned and try using that and learning more about that.
Well, that definitely sounds very fascinating, learning in a forest for a class. And I'm also amazed to know the amount of opportunities that are also available at INSEAD. Well, that brings me to my other question, which is a follow-up of my previous one. So, how have you been able to balance that academic workload with all these extracurricular activities and electives, also while also doing internships and maintaining a good social life at INSEAD?
Yeah, it's a tough ask, to be honest. And I mean, any student would tell you that you need to between the three, in the triangle, you can be good at two and not the third, like social, academics, or and work. So you can focus on two and but not all three. Focusing on all three is not possible. I mean, you can, but if you wanted to be in dean's list, then you cannot, have dedicate so much time in your social. So for me, it was never the academics, in the sense that was never to like be in the dean's list. In fact, my group, we have groups. In the first two periods, you have one group for 2 periods, and then for the third period, for P3, you have another group. So for the first 2 periods, you have to make a commitment presentation amongst your group. You have to decide on things that you want to do as a team, and how you will function as a team, and so on. So in our group, it was funny that to not be on dean's list was one of the goals, because you wanted to do things outside of it, right? But of course, I'm not trying to demean the validity or the importance of that, because you have really, really smart people in the program, and one of their goals is to be in the dean's list. So I'm just giving an example of because we asked that question. So it's difficult to balance it, but you should know what your priorities are, and it's a learning curve. You learn as you learn as long as you are willing to learn, and as long as you're willing to be dynamic and flexible, you can manage. I mean, hundreds of us before have managed, so it's not rocket science.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if I'm able to understand correctly, what you meant was like how to prioritize one over the other, so that you do not you have a equal balance amongst all three. Well, next up, I'm sure studying in
But you
France
can, I
is,
mean, don't get me
yeah,
wrong. Like, I have a
yeah,
friend who uh has balanced, not balanced, but she's got all three done. Like, she's in dean's list, she partied and socialize as much as any other person could, and she has her work in place, so you can do all three as well.
whoa, that's really amazing. So yeah, next up, I'm pretty sure that living in France is a dream come true for a lot of us. But then living in a non-English speaking country is not easy as well. So did you learn French, and was that helpful? And would you also recommend learning French to our students?
Well, it's a tough question, to be honest, because from according to me, at least, if you want to be part of a country with a different culture, it's good to learn the language, because you can it's just easier, but in so basically, INSEAD is in about 50 to 55 minutes by train from Paris south, in this town called Fontainebleau. And because it's a student town per se, it's not a student town, sorry, it's a town with INSEAD and like lots of INSEAD students. uh, Everyone speaks English there. All the shops there speak English, and you can get by without any problem by just speaking English. So, and I haven't learned French, so but I mean, I don't know what to say when you ask me if I would recommend it or not. It depends on, honestly, the priorities of the person who wants to come to France or INSEAD, because if the priority is to work in France, then obviously you need to, have working knowledge of the language. Um, so yeah, I mean, I haven't learned French, and it's not difficult at all to survive and to make yourself accustomed to Paris or even Fontainebleau. Even Paris, in fact, everyone speaks English. I've not really had any trouble. And plus, if you're an INSEAD, you don't have a lot, but you have French people and you have people who speak French. So if there's something specific that you need, that only there are French speakers, it's possible.
Well, that's absolutely true. You've also talked about a lot of diverse student body that you have found at INSEAD. So coming on that, how does the multicultural environment that is at INSEAD contribute to your learning and your personal growth? And have you had any particular memorable experiences in this regard that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because I don't think any program. I've met few people from HEC, from other schools in Europe, outside, not LBS, but at least in Europe. The diversity of student body is crazy, in the sense that we have not one person from, say, South Korea and one person. It's not just a tick mark that a checkbox that we have like one person from each country. It's like, we have a few, much more than two people from lots of countries. So you really get to learn a lot in terms of the history, in terms of them as people, the culture. Yeah, it's interesting to see how, if you guys haven't heard of this, but like, this is a really famous book called The Culture Map by Aaron Myers. You guys should buy the book and read it. It's a fascinating story not story, but fascinating insights and research about how people from different parts of the world react to different social norms and working norms, professional norms. So you really see that in the classroom, living in the classroom as well. And it's challenging for anyone and everyone to be part of that, because it's a hot box of conversations, thoughts, debates, discussions. So it's pretty cool. I mean, lots of experiences inside and outside the classroom, but most recently we had we have the highest per capita we have lots of people from Lebanon who are in our program, and basically they're the highest per capita representation of the country. So they had recently arranged a trip to Lebanon for us. So we have like a bunch of people from all over the world who had gone to Lebanon to just enjoy the culture and learn more about their history and see stuff about their city. So it's again, like, what I always have this is my way of saying that, yes, this year is a great year, because if I measure it by saying, would I have thought of this last year, that I'm going to be doing this, because I knew there's going to be travel, but did I imagine going to Lebanon with 100 people? No. Did I? So these are the things that you remember eventually.
That's a really fresh taken perspective on how you look at this diverse student experience that you have had. And also, I believe it also involves a lot of networking, which is very essential for your post MBA career path as well. And networking is also something that we at Scoreleap emphasize from day one itself. Um, so moving on, can you also tell me about your career services and support that is provided by INSEAD, and how can these services help one in shaping their post MBA career trajectory?
So, I mean, this I can answer more again in the Q&A if you need, but like, we have a large CDC, Career Development Center program, where you have heads of different industries who lead different vertical industries. And if you need help in a particular industry, or you want some knowledge about one particular industry, or you want to know people, INSEAD alumni from that industry. So all that kind of resources are available for our students. Everyone is available on to meet, either virtually or in person. They're all in campus. We also have a career coach assigned to each one of us, to look at our CVs or cover letters, and to, suggest us what to do. In fact, my career coach, super nice guy. He actually is so invested that, he also not just gives me the comments, but like makes edits in my cover letter. I'm not saying that this is a norm or anything. I'm just saying I appreciate that he does that, because that's the kind of service you can get from the CDC. And yeah, so basically, if there's an individual who wants to do something, there's someone there in the NCI program who can help in providing some kind of basic guidance and basic start pathway to get to where you want to. And of course, I don't want to get into the consulting part of it, because I guess everyone knows that NCR is known for their consulting. And yeah, there's big support and big full setup for that.
Absolutely. And it's so glad to know that it provides so much facilities for students to excel in their career post their MBA as well. Talking about your extracurricular activities, you are also currently serving as the vice president of the INSEAD Equity Club. So how has the experience been, and can you also share what is the importance of joining such clubs? And lastly, why would you advise someone to get into these extracurricular activities or join such clubs?
So it's basically the private equity and venture capital club. I'm part of the venture capital arm of the club, and my friend James and I are looking at the fund dynamics. So we're trying to bring in a new perspective and in the club by starting a pseudo fund, a virtual fund, which would mimic how a VC fund actually operates. So that's the whole plan and goal, and that's what we're trying to do. And bringing in students and other members from the club and outside of the club to participate. So that's the plan and idea and goal. So right now we're in the phase of pitch presentation. So we're looking at startups who are looking to fundraise or even to refine their pitch. So we're reaching out to students who are not just students, actually people, like we have someone who's going to be pitching to us from the US, nothing to do with INSEAD. So that's our current stage at which we are at. And it's basically, why you want to be in a club is because you either want to be in that either you want to be in that profession, or you're already in that profession and you want to continue to be passionate about it. And for me, it was the latter, where I was already in the VC profession, but for me, it was more about trying to bring some new kind of nuance to the club and continue my passion for it. So that's and it's super nice to be in a place where you have people who are as passionate or even more, actually, because you have some who are just really, really, really passionate, and you can see it and you can get inspired by it. So it's a good point of inspiration as well for those who need it, or those who think that, oh, you're great, but then you can see other people who are even more inspiring and more out there to achieve it. So you need to put your game up. So it's a nice place. It's a nice way to interact and meet people.
Definitely. I completely agree with what you said at the last. It's a nice way to interact and meet
Yeah,
new
we also have
people.
the wine club and all of that. So there are lots of ways to do it. So not that I'm part of the wine club because I'm banned from that, but that's a different story. But yeah.
Maybe we could allow some time to hear for that story. But yeah, I mean, you are diversifying your experience there by being a part of various clubs. This also brings me to one of our last questions for this session. So my last question is, Looking back, is there anything that you wish you had known before joining this INSEAD MBA program? And on that note, any advice that you would like to give to someone who is already considering to pursue this program?
Looking back, do I wish I had known before starting the MBA program? Something I need to give more thought to, but do I wish I knew something? I mean, it's the other way around for me. I'm glad I didn't know several of the things that came my way this year, which I was not aware of. Like I mentioned about the Lebanon trip, or even like the elective of making authentic decisions. For me, it was what I wanted from the program or from my MBA experience, irrespective of whichever school you go to. Was to explore and find out about things that you didn't know anything about. So a lot of that is encompassed in the fact that I'm glad I didn't know many things that were coming my way. So yeah, it's the other way around for me. I'm glad I didn't know many of the things that came my way, and I'm glad I continue to believe that it's going to be the same for me in the next 2 periods as well, in P4 and P5. So yeah, like any B school, especially in Seattle, because of its rigor, it trains you to be okay with it.
So yeah, lastly, any advice that you would like to give to someone who wants to apply for this program?
You can go to Scoreleap. That's the advice.
Well, that's correct. Um, Thank you so much. I think that was very insightful in general and very enriching and enlightening as well. I'm sure all of us, including myself, took some knowledge of value from this educational session. It will be extremely helpful to students who are applying in this 2024 fall intake as well.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to open the floor for the question and answers if there are.
Yeah, I don't know whoever's watching, like the idea of cutting short my answers was to give more time to the people hearing and listening to me. So I'm more than happy to take on questions from students or potential students.
Absolutely. Until we are receiving questions, would you like to share any anecdote that you had during your Lebanon trip? Because that sounds very fascinating, at least to me. So,
It's not an interesting anecdote, but like can share that they make some really good wine, which is surprising, and they have a big wine region. They also have they have mountains where you can ski. So you never know what you can learn and see from like Google Maps can only tell you that much, but then uh, actually visiting a place, you can understand and see what a country has to offer. Pretty cool.
right. With that, the first question that we have from our audience is, any reason why have you opted for the Jan intake? And does opting for fall intake have any perks compared to the spring intake by any chance? So,
uh I opted for the Jan intake because I wanted to do the internship. As simple as that.
all
uh
right.
there's no difference in the program. There's absolutely no difference at all, apart from that one perk you get from the Jan intake, which is the internship possibility, which is also not compulsory, by the way. So INSEAD just doesn't have a policy of pushing things onto people. So if you're not interested in internship, you don't need to do it. You don't get you don't get any grade, or not grade, sorry, you don't get any course credit for doing an internship.
All right. Next question that we have is, what are the 2 tips that you would give to ace my GMAT score in the exam?
uh like GMAT is a different ball game altogether, especially for Indian applicants. Yeah, I don't need to say that in a more clearer way than that, but yeah, it is a very important first step. Um, my advice would be is to be very patient. If you have a target score or a target school and you really need it or want it, be patient. You might not get in the first go or the second go. Me as well, I got it in my third go. So it takes a lot of patience and grit to ace the GMAT. I mean, I'm not going to get into the tricks and tips that Scoreleap can do, but my idea to mention is that it takes a lot of effort, and you're not the only one. Like, I have friends from Austria and from other parts from INSEAD who've also I don't want to use the word suffered, but who've really gone through that painful process of the GMAT. It's not just it's not you alone that does have that issue. So that's my tips. Like, I don't know if it's 2 tips or not, but yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is very important to be very patient throughout the entire process. This brings to our next question from the audience. What profile building activities would you recommend for someone who is planning to pursue their MBA in Europe? So,
irrespective of the country you're going to, like, planning to be in, like, I think profile building is something that is very important, not just for the MBA, but just in general in life. And I did it a bit too late, not a bit too late, but I started only focusing on what my interests are and my passion is, and much later on in my professional life. But I would suggest number 1 is pick out things, take your time out by yourself, or speak to your parents or your friends. What are the things you really like to do? What are the things that interests you and gives you a reason to be passionate about, and find ways of doing that meaningfully. So for me, it was to not necessarily give back to my undergrad university, but for me it was more about getting people getting students ready for finance jobs, because I didn't have that when I was studying. So that's why I started to teach in my undergrad as a visiting lecturer, and that continued for 3 years. So that was a strong point in my profile. And then I'm also a scuba diver, but I've been diving, and I've been reading and learning more about sharks in my recent years. So that's only because I'm interested and passionate about it. And then I learned a language even before the INSEAD required it, because I thought it was a good way of, I learned German. It was a good way of learning about a culture or so on. So it's more about what you want to build rather than why. So there are no specific activities per se. That's something that everyone should understand, that any school, especially INSEAD, doesn't have a criteria of activities that need to be tick marked, or you need to have those in your resume. So it could be as crazy or as wild as you are obsessed with running, or you're a marathon runner, to something as simple as you bake cookies, or I don't know. The baking cookies is not simple, but if you whatever it is that you want to do, as long as you can show some kind of interest and passion that goes beyond just your resume, I would suggest you do that. But that takes some thinking and time. I don't recommend doing just doing 2 months of NGO work is not going to help, if I'm trying to be blunt.
absolutely.
And this question is important. So if someone who has any extra thoughts or ideas, or the person who asked the question wants to know more, or is curious to understand some parts of what I said, happy to follow up with that.
Definitely. Also, the amount of interest and the kind of interests which are so diverse, like right from teaching to learning about sharks, is I think quite intriguing to me at least. This brings me to my next question from the audience, which is very much similar on the lines that you have already answered. But if you would like to elaborate, any advice on how you focused on building up your profile and how long did it take up for you to prepare for your GMAT? Maybe the latter part of it.
So I think I answered the formal. GMAT took me uh, maybe overall a year and a little more because I gave 3 attempts. So yeah, it
Uh,
took quite some
mhm.
time. That's why I was saying, like, if you need to go for it, you should. Like, don't let anything stop you.
Absolutely. The next question that we have is how important does GMAT score become when we are targeting INSEAD? So,
It's quite important, especially if you're be blunt, and this is uh, nothing to say different about INSEAD or any other school, business school, but we just have a very large uh, a pool of extremely talented professionals, individuals. So it's important. It's an important criteria, just like it is for every other business school. It's not the only criteria, though. It's definitely not the only criteria. Like uh, I know personally students who haven't um, scored really well, or and they've still made it through. So yeah, it's not the only criteria for sure, but it is an important criteria like every other criteria.
very truly said, I believe. That also brings me to my next question from the audience, which is which are the colleges that you had applied to, and what were your parameters for selecting these colleges? So if you could just give us an insight into the shortlisting process that you had done.
uh so I applied to a few schools. Yeah. My story is a bit different. I applied to INSEAD and I applied to a couple of schools in the US, because I know they're two different geographies, and uh, I really wasn't. I didn't have uh, an idea back then which geography I wanted to be in per se. So that's why the two different geographies. So I applied to uh, both Wharton, INSEAD, and applied to yeah, these schools. And the criteria was simple. Booth and Wharton was finance heavy. So I knew that if I wanted something in finance, it would be much more plausible, more not plausible, but like more. It would be an easy platform to get my finance job or whatever. So that was the main criteria for choosing those. And obviously, they're part of the they're one of the best schools in the US and in general in the world. And INSEAD was more so because of its diversity and its program in general and its professors, and it's like every other school, but also its um, potential of like their alumni, right? Like for most schools outside of the US and Canada, or maybe North America, you'd have about a 20-30% international body, right? Versus in INSEAD, it's everyone is international. The local French are just like maybe 5% or so, 10% of the full program. It's like 90% international body. So which means that you have extremely diverse alumni network and extremely deep network across the globe. So, and these are people who will, uh, there are so many of them that, even if 10 don't respond to your LinkedIn or your email, you will have someone who will. And that's what I found fascinating about INSEAD, and that's why I applied to the INSEAD as well. So yeah, like, just to put a disclaimer here, like, shortlisting schools is very, very personal. It's a very personal choice. It's very varied and dependent on what that individual wants out of the MBA. So there is no right answer to, you need to choose these schools. So everyone has their own criteria.
Certainly. Maybe we can take up a few last questions. One here says that, would you recommend going through any prerequisite courses before applying to the top B schools?
Prerequisite courses for?
Just to get acquainted with what the course might be, and maybe just to add to the profile before you send out your application to the B schools.
I don't know, to be honest. Like, once you got into the business school, you can, do some basics and business fundamentals to make life easier for you during business school. But before that, they don't really care unless, they don't. I mean, they only look at GMAT, to be honest, for all your business or your ability to. They look at your GMAT and they look at your undergrad's score. So there's no need to do it for the business school per se. I've hardly found anyone who's done that.
All right. All right. With no more questions for now, that leads us to the end of this session. Thank you so much, Vibhav, for joining us. And if you like this session, do let us know in the comment section which top B school alumni would you like us to feature next. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Scoreleap for organizing this session. And finally, a big thank you to the audience for joining with us. All right, there's a question that we have. I'm so sorry.
No, please. This is important
If
to
you
take
can take
questions.
one more, yes. Thank you so much. So with regards to the application process itself, what do you think they focus on with regards to the interviews and the shortlisting process?
With regards to the interview and INSEAD has a very elaborate like application with lots of essays and so on and so forth, and they look at all of those points very critically. Like, every essay is important. The application process is, you hit in your application and then you have two interviews, both with alumni, and they could be based in your city, or they could be outside your city. So, and it could be virtual, or earlier it used to always be in person, but I had mine virtual, both of them. So that'll be 2 video interviews and that's it. And then they tell you whether you've got it or not. So it's a very straightforward process, very well managed and run. But it's like, any tips for that, I would say, is like, you really need to be true to your story and what you want in one coming out of the essays, right? Like, one of the things that I used to do, and what I would suggest your viewers to do as well, is make your parents read your essays, even though it sounds silly, or like, you'll because they really know you, or make your sister, your brother, sibling read it, and they really know you more than anyone else. So make your best friends read it, because you need, and then the test is, if they say that yes, it sounds like you, it seems like this is you, and this is what you want, that's the best output you can get, versus like getting a sample essay from from any of these websites, or having a template ready, because all those things are easy to replicate, versus if you have a genuine application where it talks about you, it cannot be replicated by uh, any other student, because it's really showing you, and the test is asking your close friends and family.
Thank you so much. With that, we also have another question. And if you could throw some light on the current internship experience, and if you could describe that
Yeah,
in detail.
that's a good question to end at, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm currently interning remotely. So my goal was to intern or learn or work in a SaaS company, in a SaaS startup. So what I'm doing is I'm working for a company, which I can put it in the chat. The chat box is not here for anyone, but anyway, it's this company called Digitail. It's a B2B SaaS company based in the US that caters to veterinary clinics and hospitals, basically for pets. It's a super cool experience, because it's, again, tying down to my diverse experience at INSEAD. It's a very diverse team, from people from South Africa to Romania to UK to the US to India to Asia as well. Very interesting to learn and use some of the work I've studied in to use some of the studying I've done at INSEAD to use it at the internship. And it's a digital intern, it's a remote internship, so I'm working from everywhere. Right now I'm in Vienna, and then I'll be traveling again. So and like, at least, and again, this I got through because there was a INSEAD alum hiring. So it shows you how powerful the network is. And it's literally only because there was an INSEAD alum hiring did I get the opportunity to work in this company. Otherwise, finding out about this startup, or like getting to know someone in that company, would be fairly more difficult. So that's why it really tells you that the network really helps, and that I'm living proof of that.
Well, thank you so much for that experience. And with this, we finally do come to an end to this session. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Scoreleap for organizing this session. And finally, a big thank you to all the audience members who have joined with us, and the wonderful and very important questions that were raised. If you would want to get in touch with us or get mentored by our experts, you can do that via info@scoreleap.in. Do go through our website to know more about our test prep, study material, profile evaluation, and one-to-one counseling to get amazing scholarships and admits at your favorite B schools across the globe. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a wonderful week ahead, all of you. Thank you so much.